Step.
Stepsters!
I'm Asya.
And I'm Kritika, and we're your trainers from Future Steps.
Today we'll be learning about time.
Isn't that amazing? So now let's not waste any time and get into time.
I know you're all are like, oh my God, it's time, but like, it's really important to know time because it's everywhere and you need to know how to read time to be able to know time and to be on time.
Yep. So let's not waste any time and get started. Okay. So this clock you see in the middle, this is called an analog clock. And as you can see, this is a very typical looking clock, right? And let's see. Let me just write it down for you guys. This is our analog clock. This goes in a cycle of 12 hours in a normal cycle. So as you can see, it goes from 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and back to 12. But then there's another cycle, which is the 24-hour cycle, which starts from 00, which is basically 12 a.m. And then it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then it moves into the 24-hour cycle where it goes from 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and then 24. So it's a pretty simple cycle, right? But now let's look at, but it can get complicated sometimes, and that is why a lot of people don't like it. But don't worry, we'll make it really simple for you, okay? So let's start off with labeling the hands. So this big hand that you see here, we call this the hour hand. And this hand basically moves every hour. And it's probably the slowest hand out of all of the hands. So let's not worry about it too much because it doesn't move as much. It's not that confusing. It's just the biggest hand and it's called the hour hand. And then the slightly smaller hand, which is the mid-sized looking hand, that thing is called the minute hand. And you're probably wondering, well, if it's a minute hand, does it move every minute? And you are correct. It does move every minute. And then you see this very straight looking line. Trust me, that's not a crack in the screen. It's called your second hand. And yes, it's just a straight line. Okay, so now that you know what all of your hands look like and what this clock is, let's move on to a different type of clock.
So we're gonna talk about the digital clock right now. So I know how like all of y'all are like, oh my God, analog clock is so complicated and like it has numbers everywhere, like kind of, and it has hands too, and we need to memorize all of that too. But I got you here with the digital clock, right? Digital clock are just like exactly how they look, except like for example, if we just take 4:30 a.m. and if we want to put it into the digital clock, it's just going to be a 0430. That's it. Isn't that simple? So what it stands, this is for hours. So like if it's 11, you put that there. If it's 6, you put that there. Any number, you put it in this section before this colon in between the hours and the minutes. And this section here is for the minutes. So, and sometimes you can also put seconds, but the seconds can vary because they have like some have seconds and the others don't. And when you do have one, it's just going to be like a small dot, and then you'll have like the seconds, whatever, over here. And that's it. That's all you need to know about digital clock, right? And also they have like a small marking there saying if it's AM or PM. So that's it. That's all you need to know for digital clocks.
Yep. And now let's get into a couple examples, right? So you're like, oh, if there's a digital clock, why do I need to use an analog clock? Well, your exams are probably going to have the analog clock. And you need to be able to recognize an analog clock because a lot of places have an analog clock instead of a digital clock. Well, not so much anymore, but there are still a couple places that are more old-fashioned that would like to use an analog clock. And just knowing how to read an analog clock is pretty good because sometimes even your digital clocks have an analog clock in it. Like some of our Apple phones or Apple watches, and people just like to, you know, why don't I just keep it as an analog clock wallpaper? You better know how to read it. So let's try doing a couple of these on this analog clock. Let me quickly erase this then. And we are gonna be drawing these hands on the clock, and you're gonna see, oh, okay. And you're gonna see how we do it. So are you ready? Okay. Let's go ahead and do 4:30 as our first example. Okay, so as you can see, for 4:30, we know that 4:30 has an hour and a minute, right? So 4 is gonna be your hour, and I don't know where that came from. Okay. 4 is gonna be your hour, and 30 is your minute. And why I'm labeling this is because your hands are divided by hour, minute, and second. And mostly you don't have to draw the second hand because the second moves every second. So you don't need to draw the second hand, but let's try drawing your hour and minute hand based on just this. So now that we know that our hour is 4 and our minute is 30, let's look at our clock and let's count down. So we see the number 4, it's right here, right? And that is where our hand is going to be facing. And since it's 4:30, it's probably going to be facing just a little more to this side because that's how your hour hand moves. Your hour hand moves every 60 minutes, so it moves through this entire gap. So let's make our hour hand facing right here, okay? And that is still 4 as long as it's before the number 5. It's still going to be in 4. So now you know that, okay, this is my hour hand. So let's make our minute hand. Our minute hand is facing a 30. And you're probably looking at this and going, oh, well, there's no 30, right? Well, now we're gonna have to go a little more mathsy for this. And I know y'all are making faces at me and throwing desks mentally, but don't worry, I've got you. So the minute hand, how it works is basically you look at all these numbers and you go, well, it only goes up to 12. Well, now, 5, let's try going by 5's table. This is the simpler version that a lot of people usually don't explain, but I like using this version better personally because it's just easier for me. So basically, what we're gonna do is we know that we're trying to find where the number 30 would be, right? So now think of it as the 5's table. So 5 times what equals 30, right? So we know 5 times 6 equals 30. So that means, since it's 4:30, our minute hand is going to be facing the 6. And our second hand is probably going to be wandering around every second. So we don't have to worry about that. So this is probably how your 4:30 clock is going to look like. Now let's see. What do you think your 7:30 hand is going to look like? Probably the same, except the hour hand is not at 4, but it's at 7, right? So let's put it onto 7. And as you can see, I made it somewhere in the middle of 7 and 8 rather than on 7 because, like I told you, the hour hand moves every 60 minutes because 60 minutes is an hour, right? Okay.
Also, remember that, like, let's say if it's talking about 7 o'clock, right? So anything between this range before it reaches 8 and like after 7 or on 7 is considered 7 o'clock. So anything between these spaces is 7 o'clock. But after, like, if it goes to 8, it's going to be 8 o'clock. And from here to here, it'd be 8 o'clock, still 8 o'clock. And then when it reaches 9, it would be 9. And
Yeah.
that's all, it continues on.
Okay. Well, now we know how to look at analog clocks and how to read analog clocks. And you're probably wondering, why do I need to know all of this? I mean, I have a digital clock. Why would I need to know what an analog clock looks like? Well, it's pretty important because I already told you the main reasons why. But now you saw an analog clock and then you look around and I've written 0, 0, 13, 14, 15, 16, and all of those numbers up to 24. And you go, well, if we only need to know 1 to 12, why do you have everything written up to 24? Right? So that's that's the 24-hour cycle. And this 24-hour cycle is used for military time. Okay, so now we're gonna start talking about military time. And you're probably like, well, what is military time, right? So you saw that we talked about time and how it works in a 12-hour cycle. But then you also see that I've written all these other numbers that are higher than 12 outside, except the zeros. But, and then you were like, okay, well, you told us there are two cycles, the 12-hour and the 24-hour. And we only talked about the 12-hour. So now we're going to talk about our 24-hour cycle. And that is where military time kicks in. Because our 12-hour cycle is our normal cycle, our normal analog clock. And our 24-hour cycle is our military time. And now let's go more in depth of what I mean by military time. And as you probably guessed, this time is used with all military people. It's also used by doctors and surgeons to record time rather than normal time because it's a lot easier for them to understand. Because for normal time, when you say 4:30, it could be either AM or PM, right? So that's why there's military time, which differentiates between AM and PM. So let's get more in depth. Now, our military time cycle starts with 0000, and that is basically 12 a.m. And then you're like, okay, that's simple, right? 12 a.m. is 0000. And then after that, we go by our normal cycle, which is 1 a.m. and then 2 a.m. and so on until you get to 12 p.m., which looks like this. And then you're like, okay, well, after 12 p.m., we have 1 p.m. and then 2 p.m. Well, now that's where military time is different because after 12 p.m., we move into 13s and the 24-hour cycle. So after 12, it's going to be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and then 24 for 12 a.m. again. That is why when you look at the clock, I have written 24 and 00 together because 24 and 00 are basically 12 a.m. So how this goes is it starts from 00 and it goes into this loop and it goes all the way around until 12 p.m., which is this 12. And then you go outside into the 13 and you take a whole loop until you come to 24. Pretty decent, simple, understandable, hopefully.
Why is it everything? When time ticks to midnight, it's going to be 00. And then from 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. it's going to be like the normal way you say it. So like with normal numbers from 1 to 12. And then from 12 p.m. it goes to 13, 14, and so on until 24.
Yep. And another thing I want to add on is, you know how time doesn't move just by hours, so you wouldn't, if it's like, let's say half an hour after 1 a.m. or 1 p.m., you aren't gonna say 1 p.m., right? So let's say it's like 1:30 p.m. Or let's just use the examples we have here. Now, 4:30 a.m. is gonna look the same. It's gonna look like 4:30 a.m. But then when you go into p.m., like I told you, it goes into the outside ring, which is your 24-hour cycle from 13 to 24. So if it's 3 p.m., or let's say instead of 3 p.m., let's say something like 3:35 p.m., okay? So if it's 3:35 p.m., um, what do you think the time in military time would look like? Probably not 3:35. Because, like I told you, after 12 p.m., it goes into 13, 14, 15, 16, and all of that. So now let's look back at our analog clock and let's find where 3 is. That's where 3 is. And then if you look at the outside, we've written it all in order for this very reason. So 3, this 3 would represent 3 a.m. And then when you look at the outside, the 15 would represent 3 p.m. So every time it goes into PM and you want to convert it from your normal time to military time, all you have to do is look at the hour and then go into your clock or this clock looking, you'd say graphic, and you go to 3 and then you look at what 3 would be in PM. So since it's 15, we're just going to replace the 3 by 15 and everything else would look the same. So 3:35 in military time would just be 15:35. And notice how I didn't put a colon this time because that you could have it that way, but if you have it on a clock, it will obviously have a colon. So if you go to your iPhone or your phone and then you change your time from normal time to military time, it is probably going to show up like this for 3:35 p.m. And that's how every single thing would be. So the AMs would be the same until you reach 12 p.m. 12 p.m. is also going to be the same. And then everything after that would follow the same rule I just told you.
Hmm.
So now just a small conclusion statement or just a small little summary. If you probably didn't understand anything we told you yet, you should probably listen to the summary part of it.
And also, I just want to add in, not every single time you will have like 30 or like 45 or 55 that are like multiples of 5. Sometimes you'll have something like 13 in the middle. And that's when you have like lines in the middle of these. So like it's 1, 2, that's okay. So what you do is 1 times 5. Oh, here it's 11, 13, right? So you put the hours hand in 11 near this area. And then for these, since it's 13 and you know that 5 times 2 is 10, so it's between 2 and 3 in the clock. So it's between this area. So you put 1. So it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then you have 15 here, right? So the minutes hand will go right 10, that's 10, right? Near to 11, 12, and 13. So it'd be here. That would be your minutes hand. It'd be pointing here in this case. So just remember, not always would there be just like multiples of 5 in your time. Sometimes they'll be in between these spaces. And now you know what it means when the clock is just ticking and the minutes or the hours hand is just in between those gaps, right?
Yep, and every gap consists of 10 ticks because that's how time works. And every single time you're confused, you can just count through those and find what exact time it is. And just like Glacia mentioned, you could just do something as 5 times something equals a multiple of 5 that is close to that number. Like she said, 10, which is pretty close to 13. And now let's move on to our summary, where I know you guys are probably really confused right now and still wondering, oh, I still don't get it. Well, let's just have a little wrap up. We talked about analog clocks, which are these funky looking things. An analog clock has 2 cycles, from 1 to 12, which is a 12-hour cycle, and then 0 to 24, which is a 24-hour cycle. And obviously, our 24-hour cycle includes our 12-hour cycle, and that is your entire of analog clock. And then we talked about our digital clock, where this is your hour and then this is your minute. And some of them do mention whether it's AM or PM. And in our case, we said AM because our example was 4:30 AM, and that's your digital clock. And then we also said that analog clocks have three arms, but we only need to know 2 of them. The big one is your hour, and the slightly smaller one is your minute hand. So now you know how our analog clock and our digital clock look and what they contain. And then we talked about how to show these times in our analog clock, where we told you that the hour is going to point at the exact hour, and the minute is going to be pointing at the exact minute. And the hour doesn't have to be pointing at the exact hour, but it can be pointing just a little more as long as it's in the space of the hour. So like we said, for 7:30, our hour hand isn't exactly at 7, but it's in the space between 7 and 8, which counts as 7. And that applies for every other time. And then we talked about military time, which is our 24-hour cycle, where 12 a.m. is 0000, and then up to 12 p.m. it goes by our normal cycle, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on. And then after 12 p.m., we said that it goes into our 13, 14, 15, and so on, which is 13 as in 1 p.m., 14 as in 2 p.m., and so on until we get back, which is 20, which ends at 24, which is also the same as 12 a.m. So that is our entire lesson on time and clocks. And if you have any other questions, please do comment down below. We'd love to answer your questions. If you have any video requests, we could also do that. So if you want us to explain another topic that you are really confused about and you don't see on our page, you can just comment down below to one of our videos, or you could probably send us an email at our email, which we'll show at the end of our video.
And
So
also make sure to practice. And if you need more help, you can go back to our video and rewatch it again. We also have other math concepts in our channel, so check them out. And for example, we have some examples here that we still didn't go through. You can try drawing them into the analog clock, trying to convert them into the military time. And just remember that practice makes everyone perfect. So practice as much as you can, and then you're gonna get better at it. Trust us.
yep, and we would love, and if you'd like, you could definitely shoot us an email, and you could go, well, I finished this entire practice and I am a little confused about this one question. You could send it over to us, and we'll probably reply to your email with a response and answer to your question.
Or if you're too confused on like emailing us, you can just like comment down below on this YouTube video.
Yep. So that was all we had for you today. Thank you so much for watching. See you in our next video. Goodbye, Stepsters.
Bye, Stepsters.